Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving into a law of physics that you experience literally every single second of your life. But here's the crazy part. It's one our brains almost always get completely wrong. Yep, we're talking about Newton's first law of motion.
All right, so let's start with a really simple scenario. Imagine you push a book across a table, right? What happens? Well, obviously it slides for a bit, it slows down, and it stops. But the real question is, why does it stop?
If you really think about it, our gut feeling, the intuition we've built up over our entire lives watching stuff like that book, it just screams at us that things need a constant push to keep moving, right? If you want to keep it going, you gotta keep pushing it. It just feels right.
Okay, but this is where physics just loves to throw us a curveball. On one hand, our intuition says motion needs a constant force. But then Newton's law comes along and says the exact opposite, that an object will keep moving without one. So what's going on here? Who's right?
So here it is, the law itself. An object in motion stays in motion at a constant velocity, unless a net force acts on it. And by the way, this also covers things that are just sitting still. They just stay put. This one little sentence, it is honestly one of the most powerful and foundational ideas in all of physics.
The key word here, the big idea behind this law is inertia. So what is it? Think of it like this. Inertia is just an object's stubbornness. It's this built-in property that makes things resist changes to what they're doing. If something's moving, it wants to keep moving. If it's just sitting there, it wants to keep sitting there.
And the rule for inertia is super simple. The more mass something has, the more inertia it has. I mean, think about it, right? It's way harder to get a bus moving from a standstill than a bicycle. And it's also a whole lot harder to stop that bus once it's rolling. Why? Because the bus has more mass, which means it has way more inertia. More of that stubbornness.
So, this brings us right back to where we started. Back to our book? If that book has inertia, and it wants to keep moving, then why in the world did it stop? Clearly, there's a missing piece here. What are we not seeing?
All right, so let's find that missing piece. What's the real reason things stop? Well, it all comes down to uncovering the unseen forces that are all around us, the ones our intuition just tends to overlook.
And here's the big reveal. Our intuition isn't totally wrong. It's just incomplete. See, with our sliding book, there was another force in play the whole time. It's this invisible but totally real force called friction, and it was actively working against the book's motion.
And this idea leads to a really important distinction. You've got two scenarios. First, you have unbalanced forces. That's when one force is stronger than the others, like friction on our book. That causes a change in motion, what physicists call acceleration. But when all the forces are perfectly balanced, they cancel each other out completely. And that means there is no change in motion. The object just keeps on doing what it was doing.
So physicists needed a name for this grand total of all the forces acting on something. And they call it the net force. It's the sum of every single push and pull. And that net force is the only thing that matters when you're trying to figure out if an object's motion is going to change.
Okay, so that's the theory. But how do we actually see all these forces and figure out what the net force is? Well, for that, we need to open up the physicist's toolkit.
And the number one tool in that toolkit is something called a free body diagram. It sounds fancy, but it's actually super simple and powerful. It's how you make all those invisible forces visible. All you do is, 1, you pick your object. 2, you just draw it as a simple dot. And 3, you draw arrows representing every single force acting on that dot. And just like that, the whole picture becomes a lot clearer.
And believe it or not, so much of this analysis boils down to one beautiful, elegant equation. Sigma F equals 0. That's it. That's the math version of saying the net force is 0, or hey, all the forces are perfectly balanced.
So what does sigma F equals 0 actually mean for an object? It means its velocity is constant. There's no acceleration, no change in its motion at all. And this is the part you really got to remember. That's true whether the object is sitting perfectly still or if it's cruising along at a steady speed. Same deal.
All right,
So now that we have the right tools and the right mindset, let's look around. Because once you know what you're looking for, you start to see that this idea of constant motion, of balanced forces, it's absolutely everywhere.
Okay, let's start with a classic, almost perfect example. The puck on an air hockey table. Come on, you've played it, right? You know how that puck just seems to glide like magic? Like it's never going to stop. It's almost like it's defying friction.
And here's the secret sauce. The table is constantly blowing a thin cushion of air, lifting the puck up just a tiny bit. This makes the friction almost vanish. So after you give it that first little tap, the net force on it is practically zero. And what happens then? Its inertia just takes over, and it sails across the table at a beautiful constant velocity.
All right, next up, a very similar idea, but one you can see out in the real world, a skateboarder just coasting along on a nice, smooth patch of pavement.
It's basically the same principle as the air hockey puck, right? The wheels are doing the job of minimizing friction. So, after the skater gives that initial push off the ground and just stands there, the net force is super close to zero, and again, inertia does the rest. It just carries them forward, letting them coast smoothly for a surprisingly long time.
Okay, let's level up. This next example is a little more complex, but it is so important for understanding this in the real world. Let's talk about a car driving on the highway with its cruise control locked in.
Now, this is the really key insight. A car moving at a constant speed doesn't mean there are no forces acting on it. Oh no, there are huge forces. You've got air resistance pushing back. You've got friction from the road. All these things are trying to slow the car down. So what's the engine doing? The engine is providing a forward push, a thrust, that perfectly, and I mean perfectly, balances out all those backward forces. When they all cancel each other out, what's the net force? It's zero. And the result? The car maintains a perfect constant velocity. So if you take one thing away from all of this, let it be this. This is the idea that completely flips our everyday intuition upside down. A net force is not needed to maintain motion. You do not need a net force to keep something moving. You only need a net force to change its motion, to speed it up, to slow it down, or to make it turn. So let's end with one last little pop quiz to see if this has really clicked. You have a car, it's on cruise control, traveling in a rock-solid, steady 60 miles per hour on a flat road. My question for you is, what is the net force acting on that car? If you said zero, then congratulations. You've officially rewired your brain. You now truly get Newton's first law.